Welcome to Transformers, the podcast about how business people and policymakers are creating a sustainable future. I'm your host, Kai Embren. My guests today are 5 people with deep knowledge and experience of cities and regions. Yunus Arikan, Director of Global Advocacy at ICLEI World Secretariat. Hjalmar Falk, Operational Manager of BID Malmö. Frida Gauthier Leander, Senior Consultant at Ramboll Social and Economic Impacts in Malmö. Trevor Graham, Director of Urbanisland in Malmö. Milan Obradovic, Deputy Operational Manager BID Malmö. So this week, when the City of Malmö hosts ICLEI's World Congress of Local and Regional Governments dedicated to sustainable urban development, I decided to shine a light on some of the world's urban challenges with the people who have been working in the development of a sustainable Malmö, and also people who can talk about ICLEI's network of more than 2,500 local regional governments. Welcome, Yunus. You are the first guest in my podcast from the City of Malmö, the ICLEI's World Congress of Local and Regional Governments, the leading network of more than 1,750 cities around the world, and who are committed to work on sustainable future. So, can you tell us what's on the agenda in Malmö?
We have around more than 500 participants across the world. So we said that it's not just to listen and talk, but to see action on the ground. And Malmö is a test bed and an urban lab for sustainability. The key highlight of the World Congress here will be, of course, our progress on 5 pathways: low emission, nature-based, circular, resilient. But the 5th one will be kicked off, the equitable and people-centered development pathway in Malmö through our Malmö commitment. And that will be the flagship of our event here.
Mm. And when we're going into the role of cities in relationship to the national and the global level, how do you see the local and regional cities' position today?
Well, this is of course, we are living in interesting and important and challenging times. What we have seen, ICLEI has been active in the space since 1990 Europe. Over these 35 years, we have seen mushrooming of initiatives with and for local governments, and the United Nations, the national governments are much more aware. They have acknowledged now that we are in an urban world. They are aware many of the solutions at the global and national level cannot be sorted out without cities, or can be easily addressed with local and regional governments. We have seen this in the climate agenda, Paris and Glasgow, biodiversity, and many others. However, to put this into action needs a certain new way of collaboration in terms of governance structures, in terms of sharing of responsibilities, budgets, and authorities, decision making. And we are also seeing cities are also changing. They are much more open to their citizens in terms of those who are on the front runner. And finally, we are in the verge of a 3rd World War. And in that space, again, the role of cities in bringing peace, sustainability, and going hand in hand is becoming more and more clear. The world needs cities, and the cities will also demand multi-stakeholder and multi-level collaboration, that they cannot achieve their goals without partnerships with their different peers, but also with their national global partners.
Do you think it can be stronger position for cities in the global level?
Yes, that's our goal. I mean, there is an unprecedented reference to cities in the G7 agenda. G7 is important because it represents the first club of the nations, which is the rich and developed ones. So having this recognition by them is important, because that also spillovers to G20 and others. In the United Nations, Secretary General is about to launch his advisory group of local and regional governments, which will be elevating our interaction. And we will also see in parallel, with the climate debate, in the efforts to go to climate emergency mode, bringing urban development to the climate action becomes more important than ever. And good news is that UN Habitat, for the first time, will convene the Climate and Urbanization Ministerial at COP27 with Egypt, of course. And then we will have a deal for nature where it will be also addressing subnational engagement. So if we can make these a number of cornerstones systematically linked to each other, and hoping that we will get to a much more equal world, we believe cities could be the engines of drivers for a positive change or prevent worse things to come.
As I understand also, there's a lot of different communities and cities and regions that are very active in your network. Can you give us and the listener 5 of your favorites who are in the front?
Obviously, representing a network, I cannot be that much objective. I would try to look for our champions in our leadership. So I would like to start, of course, Scandinavia has always been, Scandinavian, the Nordic way of living has always been pioneering. So of course, Malmö will be showing this, how it is implemented for years and years of experience and introducing new innovative ideas. So, of course, I would like to start with Malmö. But again, Sweden has so many success stories for Stockholm and other cities. So there is plenty of Scandinavian experience. And also not just Sweden. Turku, Vice President of ICLEI, is also here with us. So we're also proud to have Turku, a European Nordic country. In the Southern or Eastern Europe, for example, let me put it this way. Cities are also dynamic, yeah? They can change. The leaders change, the staff change. So you cannot talk about a continuous, perfect case. There are ups and downs. So I'm talking about today's, let's say, realities. In the global south, for example, in the European south, we have Mayor of Izmir, one of the biggest metropolitans, which is also introducing the new concepts of circular culture, which will also be working with ICLEI. In the Africa, I mean, Kelimane, our representative of ICLEI, is a regional committee in Africa. Not too many people is aware of it. In Mozambique, they are making a brilliant success story about eco-mobility, bringing mobility to the equality of the people and introducing nature-based solutions. Mayor of Kelimane is one of our champions. We're very happy. Together, to the other end, Chefchaouen, which is the first city in Morocco committed to raise to resilience. In Asia, you will hear from ICLEI, again, first Vice President Atish Marlena, member of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi Capital Territory, in a new way of culture of politics in Delhi, how they can prevent corruption and introduce services, basic services, equitable and affordable. In the US, you will see from Hawaii to Ann Arbor, our leaders bringing how local governments in the US will continue to keep the bar high, and this time a bit more better with the federal government. And in the global south, again in Latin America, we are proud to have Recife, the first city declaring climate emergency, climate neutrality, and now having a youngest mayor in Brazil.
Oh, great, Jonas, and it's a pleasure to have you as a guest in this podcast, specific looking into the ICLEI World Congress in Malmö. Thank you for your participation today.
Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you. Now I have been moving out from the Congress in Malmö at the ICLEI World Congress, and I have with me Hjalmar Falk here in Sofielund. Sofielund is one of the most interesting areas in Malmö with its bid. We have a lot of different sustainability projects in Malmö named like Augustenborg, Hilly, Seger Park, Lindängen. But Sofielund, Hjalmar, what is the special thing happening here?
Well, it started around 2010 when we had 5 area programs in Malmö. And now we are standing in the middle of Sofielund, and this area is one of the most vulnerable areas in Malmö. And in 2010, it was pointed out by the politicians in Malmö as a really problem area. We had a lot of drug problems, lot of criminal problems, and lot of problems with the property owners. And we could very soon find out that there were a lot of slum owners in this area, you know, where people were living in a really bad condition. And in the beginning, we had a list about 20 property owners in this area, and there's 2,400 households here. But when we were knocking doors in the area, we found 59 property owners in this area. When we looked at these 59 property owners, we found about 10, 15 property owners with about 15, 20 properties in the area who were in really bad conditions, really bad. People were feeling very bad in the apartments. It was a lot of problem there, and we had to take a lot of those property owners to the rental organization, and also to the rental court, to see if we could do something about this. And while working with this, and also the media was very interested in our work, we found out a model to work with property owners, because suddenly we got rid of a lot of property owners in the area. And then we found a model called BID, and BID is standing for Business Improvement District in other countries, in the USA and Canada and so on. But in Malmö, we had translated the word into more focusing on people living in the area, and more at integration and dialogue instead. But we don't call it project anymore, because people in Malmö are so tired of projects. So we call it a long-term process, because to change an area like south part of Sofielund takes about 5 to 15 years. And we also find out that the key factor for making a good area and good living environments for the people living in the area, the key factor of this is the property owners. They're the most important persons working if we're going to get sustainability in an area. So we started to work with the property owners, and we created a partnership between the property owners, between Malmö City, and between the authorities in Malmö, for example the police authorities and the fire department and so on. And we also picked up a lot of the house communities in the area, where people own their own apartment, because it was very important to get them into the partnership also, because we could then reach all the inhabitants, all the people living in the area. And then we also, 2014, when we started the bid, we also contacted Malmö University, and we got in contact with 2 criminologists working at the department in the university, and they started to follow us. And they also could make a form of a zero line in the area. What is the challenges in the area? What do we have to work with in the area? What is the most important for people to work in the area? So 2014 we started with that, and we got sent out a lot of surveys to people living in the area, to property owners, to business and so on, and asked them, what shall we work with now when we are starting a long-term process? And people said what we expected. We want to have a safe area, and we want to have a clean area. Safe and clean, that was the most important. There was a lot of littering in the area, a lot of graffiti in the area, a lot of people selling drugs in the area, a lot of criminality, a lot of burning cars, and people didn't want to have this anymore. That was the starting point of the bid process in Sofielund.
Maybe you can say a little bit about the size of the area. How many people are living here?
Yeah, in south part of Sofielund we have about 2,400 households. And when we started the bid, we thought that it was too small to start a bid in. So we escalated that to the whole Sofielund. So now we are working with around 9,000 households. We have about 980 businesses in Sofielund, from the small football club up to the big bakery, Pågens Bakery, who's making bread and so on in Malmö. And we have about 150 NGOs in the area, and around 50, I think about 50 house communities where you own your own apartment. So it's a big ecosystem of business and property owners and NGOs. So we started to work very hard. We worked from 2014 to 2019, and if I say like this, in 2015-16 we had about 40-50 young men harassing people in the area. And 2017-19 we had about 10 left in the area. Many have jumped off the criminality, left the criminal world. Many have got into the exit programs in Malmö because we were so hunting them everywhere. Property owners were securing up their properties, so you couldn't sell drugs in the area, in the properties. We were made certifications for the properties to make them safe and secure, so people could feel that when we are living in our properties, no one can come in there, no one can disturb us. And we started to clean up the whole area. A lot of things happening. And 2019, the governmental organization were working with us and also giving us money for researchers in Sofielund. They asked us if we wanted to be part of a big competition in Europe called ECPA, which stands for European Crime Prevention Award. So we said, okay, we can try if we can join this award and this competition, and we won. So 2019 we got gold in this competition before Germany and Denmark, and this was really something good for the property owners and for this Malmö city. Suddenly they saw that if you're working together with something and do it in collaboration, and we all do the same thing at the same time, then it gets effect. But if we work in those silos and don't help each other, you can't change anything. But if you do it together, because Malmö City was so during this time they were so concerned about this, because they said we can't do this alone. We have to have help from the property owners, and the property owners they screamed for help from the city, and the police they screamed for help from the property owners and from Malmö City. But when we started to make this partnership, suddenly something happened. So this was a big success.
You are an independent organization.
Yes, we are.
And
NGO.
related to the city structure. But the city learn a lot from what you are doing. And when you look at what you gain, and you said it is not a project, it's a process. So how do you expand your knowledge and experience to other areas in Malmö?
It has taken a couple of years. I was employed before by Malmö City. Now I'm employed by the property owners. But the knowledge we got now from the researchers, for example, and all the analysis we have done in Sofielund, we have used that to look at can we expand this to other areas in Malmö. And the politicians in Malmö are very interested in expanding into other areas. And when we won this prize and we could see a decrease of problems and challenges, so you see a decrease of problems in Sofielund. The police said maybe we can lift south part of Sofielund from this list of vulnerable areas. But we have another area in Malmö called Möllevången, which is a great problem. So now we took the experience from Sofielund and we can put it over into Möllevången, the new area. Which is very different from Sofielund, because in Möllevången in Malmö we have this is the biggest area in Malmö where we have a lot of pubs, music, we have nightclubs, restaurants, we have a lot of businesses in the area. We have about 3,800 businesses in this new area, and we have about 12,800 households. We have about totally in Sofielund and Möllevången we are now working with 220 property owners. It's incredible amount of property owners we are working with, and in Möllevången we have about 100 housing communities working with them and about 400 NGOs. So even here we have this big, what I call ecosystem of different stakeholders which we have to work together with.
So if you touch the future issues of Sofielund and Malmö, where do you think you will go for the time to come?
After Möllevången?
Yes.
We are talking about some other areas in Malmö, but we have also worked with some other cities in Sweden. For example, we have Uppsala, which is one big city in north and middle of Sweden, asked us for help how to start a bid in Uppsala. So now we are helping them, and we also have some other cities in south part of Sweden who has been calling us for help, and we are helping with the structure because you can't transform. You can't take a bid from one area and put it into a new area. You have to look very much how the area looks. How is the culture? How is the socio-economic factors? How is the architecture in the area, culture in the area, and so on. So a lot of factors you have to look before you start a bid.
One of the main issues at the ICLEI Congress is also related to the environmental issues and climate issues. Has the climate issue been important for you also in the work in Sofielund?
It was extremely important, because when we started in 2015, we got a lot of signals from some of the property owners. They asked us, are we not going to use the Agenda 2030 goals? How can we work with them? So in 2018, we were the first area in Malmö who wrote a climate contract between our electrical company E.ON and our water supplying company, which is the municipal water supplying company, and property owner BID Sofielund and Malmö City. And the first we did was to look at how can we work with renewable energy, for example. So we worked a lot of installing solar panels, for example. We're looking at how can we work with when it's raining a lot and we get this flooding with water in the area. How can we work with that? How can we work with green areas? How can we expand with get more green areas in the area? People can eat and maybe also collect water when it's too much rain coming. We have a nearby area called Augustenborg here, where we're working very much with this, and we try to take experience from that area also. Working with green roof and many other things.
So as a total issue of change in the local neighborhoods here, how do you see the politicians' role? Do they listen to you to take care about the experience you have and trying to push for development?
I would say like this, when I was employed in Malmö, I had to be honest, I had problems with some of my civil servants. It was very difficult for me to get through the bureaucracy in Malmö City. So I had to turn to the politicians. So I turned to the politicians and told them the importance of making a bid and making this partnership, because we can all help each other. And you know, it was the property owners who knocked at my door first and asked me, can we help each other and start a bid? So I told Malmö City, the politicians, if you want to be on this trip, on this journey, you have to jump on now, because the property owners want to help us. And the politicians, I have to say, they have been so supporting and really pointing with the whole hand and say, now we are going to start a bid process in Malmö. We are going to work like this, and you all have to help in this partnership, and also support in both resources. And Malmö City is now also is a member in the NGOs that put in a bit of money every year for both property owners in Möllevång and both property owners in Sofielund.
Thank you very much, Hjalmar, for this introduction to Sofielund. And with me here also I have Milan. So Milan, welcome to the program. And when we talk about climate contract, what does that mean?
Well, when Malmö started out to work with sustainability, started out with green sustainability and economical sustainability. And they started working in Western Harbour. When they talked to people, property owners, to develop the area, they signed a contract, one of the most sustainable areas in the world. And they continued that in Hyllie. And what we could see in Hyllie was that companies usually working separately, competing to each other. They were starting to collaborate, working together to make it more sustainable, to get high goals with the area.
And how successful has it been when you look back, and what have you learned mostly from the programs?
It's been very successfully. We can see that if the politicians set up high goals and long-term goals, they attract the best civil servants, they attract the companies, they attract the university, and then they start working together, and then they can achieve something, really high goals, and set changes in the area.
So it's a question of political leadership?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of politicians talk about the environment and change, but they don't know what to talk about. But what you can see in cities like Malmö, that the politicians really have high goals and long-term goals. They want to do something, and we can see that they really do that.
Thank you very much, Milan. And we're going to go indoors now and to still talk a little bit more about the work here in Malmö and particularly in Sofielund. Thank you, Milan.
Thank you.
Welcome, Trevor and Graham, one long-term worker in Malmö, and we are here in Sofielund and talking about the development of Malmö city as a sustainable city. But we're going to look into the question about the climate issue also. And what's your experience from the work you have done so far in Malmö?
I think, in some respects, you can say we started working with climate change before we were talking about climate change. We were talking in terms of renewable energy and an awareness that there was an increasing risk of flooding incidents and those kind of issues. So we were working with climate mitigation, climate adaptation before the terminology was really sort of in place. So this was going back into the late 90s because it was the obvious thing to do. Malmö was coming out of its economic crisis at the same time as the Rio conference was taking place, and sustainability then became part of kind of the reinventing of the city. So we were experimenting at that time essentially on a district scale. So urban regeneration just up the road here in Augustenborg, which is now kind of a flagship of sustainable adaptation. So we've got a study visit going there from the ICLEI Congress now. And then the parallel project with Augustenborg. So Augustenborg was like the unemployed shipyard workers and the new arrived refugees from war zones and all the rest of it. So working in a kind of like a gritty, real life community, engaging people in the transition there. And at the same time working in the Western Harbour with the waterfront development on old industrial brownfield site, where the concept was around 100% renewable energy, energy efficient buildings, pedestrian friendly, cycle friendly urban design. So there was a lot of elements of what you would call like the move towards a climate neutral city, which was taking place at that time. And then when the first phase of the Western Harbour was complete with its innovative energy systems and all the rest of it, and now Augustenborg was nearing its first stage of completion, the question was then, well, where do we go now? And we say, well, look, okay, we've demonstrated that you can do a 100% renewable district, and not only that it's a sustainable district, it's also seen as being an attractive district. It's not about sacrifice, this is about quality of life. So it reframes the whole discussion about sustainability as being a kind of something on the fringes to being something at the core of urban living. So then the next question was, okay, we've done a district, what about a city? Could you have a 100% renewable city? So we started like actively working towards, well, what could that look like? Within a few years, the offshore wind farm was up and running. That was the equivalent of roundabout, I think at the time, about 40% of the household energy or electricity demand in the city was the equivalent of what they were producing. And then it became very easy to say, well, look, if we had two of those and use our electricity a bit more wisely, we're there. And suddenly that whole discussion about what seemed like pie in the sky, rocket science, was actually, this is deliverable. We can kind of do this. And so I think there's been like a timeline, if you like, going back into the 1990s, taking us to the current day. Malmö has increased from, I think, a population of about 200,000 back then to 350,000 now, and at the same time reduced its carbon emissions by 40%. So you could say there's been a huge development during that time. But the reality is that we've got a target now of 2030 to be climate neutral. So we have to do more than twice as much as what we've done over the last 30 years we need to do in the next 7. So that's kind of the scope of our challenge at the moment.
Which are the challenges in this process?
Well, I mean, the big one for Malmö, as most other places, is mobility. It's something where we can build our cycle lanes, we can improve our bus infrastructure, we can electrify the buses, we can make cycling, walking, public transport more attractive, but at the end of the day, we have to entice people out of their cars. So there's an issue of individual choice. And I think this is where the real challenges start kicking in, because this is political dynamite. So how do you deal with those individual choice issues as from a city perspective, from a political perspective? We see like significant movement in other areas, things like the LFM30, the local climate neutral building partnership, which has mobilised 200 businesses in the city, committed to all of their projects, all of their operations. So there's like building maintenance, building renovation, but also building operations and construction, everything being climate neutral by 2030. So it's a massive commitment. They might not get all the way, but they're going to be getting a long way. So there's some really interesting things in progress, but we've got big challenges, as I say, around mobility. We've got big challenges as well outside of our 2030 goal, because the 2030 is all about our territorial emissions. The additional step, and there is a 2030 goal around reducing our consumption emissions, and that again, it's down to personal choices. And again, it's political dynamite. So the reality is that we have some districts in Malmö where emissions are probably twice what the equitable global share would be. And you say, okay, we could probably deal with that on a systems level by making sure that everybody's got 100% renewable energy going into their homes, and they've got good choices for public transport. These are the people on the lowest incomes who have the lowest climate impact. So our challenge there is to improve their quality of life and make sure that we can still decrease the climate emissions. On the other hand, we've got other parts of the city where climate emissions are probably 8 or 9 times higher than the global equitable level. How do we work there? How do we deal with that? So those kind of at one level that's an issue that's kind of like on the horizon that we haven't really started working with. We've been working a lot from the sort of the technical side around how can we improve our mobility, how can we improve construction, all of those kind of issues. We're moving, I think, into a time where we need to start understanding what can we do, how can we engage with people around this. So we're looking at developing some of the past experience of working in geographical areas, so focusing, that old focus on the Western Harbour, on Augustenborg, or the stuff that's going on here in Sofia Lund, things that are happening in other parts of the city, and how can we piggyback on that and bring in a stronger climate dimension, and also those dimensions around improving quality of lives, improving job opportunities, all of those kind of things. How much of that can we start delivering through the climate transition? Is that going to be, new jobs in circular economy and in the sharing economy? There are plans for battery factory. There are things in the pipeline which could be part of that transition, which actually brings together the employment, socioeconomic development agenda and the climate agenda in a very, very strong way. But we're not quite there. We're feeling our way, and we need to go fast. And this is a challenge.
How is it with the financing part of this? Do you have enough finance to invest in this area of need?
I mean, I think the city started working with its green bonds 4 or 5 years ago, and that's mobilising capital at slightly improved rates to what we were getting otherwise. Malmö was sort of AAA rated, so borrowing money isn't a huge problem. But obviously there's a limit to how much the city wants to borrow. So there are obviously limits from that perspective. I think the challenge, I suppose, is there are financial opportunities for the marketable, market-ready, the business-ready work. What we need is the bridging finance. So the risk finance to be able to cover the stuff where you're being a bit more experimental, that you're sticking your neck out and you're going out above and beyond. And certainly in some areas where there are massive challenges around cost of living, cost of homes, cost of housing here is, as in most European cities and other cities around the world, is a real challenge. So how do you go about urban regeneration, but making sure that the people can still afford to stay in their homes, but at the same time making sure that those homes are coming up to future-proofing climate standards and all those kind of things. So there are challenges around the financing as well, looking at new business models, looking at ways of maybe, if you're getting those kind of win-win-wins of socioeconomic savings, increased tax flows coming out of some of that work at the same time that you're making climate investments. There's money going back into the public purse, there's savings being made. Can you harvest some of that to put into that some of the upfront investment, so that you're balancing your short-term investment with your long-term savings? So all those kind of challenges, which are still to be worked out, I think.
Great conclusion from you, Trevor, and thank you very much for your participation in the Transformers podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still in Sofielund in Malmö, I have with me now Frida Gauthier Leander. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
You have been working in the City of Malmö many years, and particularly you have been looking into the change process in local areas and the City of Malmö. What is your view on how a change maker can succeed in this process?
I have been working from the beginning. I started working with communication and communication for change mostly, and then after for the last 5 years I was working with as a sustainability strategist, but also with this change perspective from the central level, the city office. And I think from my experience in the City of Malmö, there is a culture and an attitude or an approach to change that is open and willing and curious, I would say, that makes it easier in one way to succeed or survive sometimes as a change maker. Or the way between the civil organization or the civil servants organization and the politicians or the decision makers isn't that long. It's quite easy to get in contact and to have a dialogue with decision makers and the management structure. So I think that's one thing that is important to lift regarding change processes.
Yeah, because when you see a process of change, you have the citizens, you have the civil servants, and you have the politicians. And where do you see the biggest problem when you drive this type of process?
Yes, and there is also the local businesses, of course. And I think sometimes it is to really understand the need. What is the real need of the citizens of the area? To really listen, not only to have this dialogue where the citizens or the civil society can't really impact. Either they come in too late or there isn't enough room to really make a difference, to make an impact. So I think that's a problem that we've been working with in the City of Malmö for a long time, and it's been learning along the way. I think that's another key to succeeding with change is to be brave enough to fail and to be wise enough to change it next time, to do something different, to learn. And dialogue and participation from citizens is one of those things that we have been working with for a long time and change along the way.
And we have the 2030 agenda in Malmö. How has it progressed in the latest years?
Yes, I've been an SDG coordinator for the last 5 years, so I think I could start by saying that the politicians were driving the to adopt the agenda already from the start at 2015. So there's been this push from the political level that we are making the global goals local. And how do we translate that? So that's been an ongoing process for the last 5 years. We have been cooperating and working together with all the departments of Malmö to form a strategy for implementation. And one of the key processes there has been to get the global goals integrated, sustainability integrated into existing processes, the decision-making processes, the budget process, and so on. So that's been a key factor that we've been working with, so that every time someone makes a decision, the 2030 agenda or the global goals or sustainability from the 3 dimensions should be considered, and goal conflicts, as we call it, or synergies should be identified, so that the decision is secured for sustainability, or at least the least possible, doing the least possible harm to sustainability, or increasing the synergies, the good effects of the decision. So that's one way. And the other processes are about communication, participation, partnerships, and that stems from the Malmö Commission knowledge alliances, that we need to work together. We need to really identify the needs, what needs to be done, what are the needs of the citizens, and what are the needs top down as well, and somehow have these conversations that lead to the best possible decision for sustainable development.
So in the program, you have met Trevor Graham, you have met Frida Gottnier-Leander, and also Milan Obradovic and Hjalmar Falk. And we have been covering different types of perspective of a city's challenges, and from the social issue to the climate issue. My question to all of you now, is Malmö on track to meet the sustainability targets? Trevor?
I think we've got our work cut out. We've got very ambitious targets for 2030. I think the potential is there to be close to reaching those targets. The chances are there'll still be a few little threads to pull together at the end, but the real challenge is that we've got such a short time to do it. So we've got a massive mobilization to take place in a very short space of time.
Frida?
I think we have the conditions in place, but also there's a lot of big changes that are needed, not least in the climate area. I think we will be able to reach some of the targets, but not all, even though I think if we are progressing, if we are really getting closer towards it, it's a good start.
Milan?
We're on the right tracks, but there might be some challenges. We have to collaborate more with the organizations like BID. But by setting high goals and long-term goals, we can achieve it, but there's still some work. A little bit more collaboration.
And Hjalmar?
I think that we have a lot of challenges left, and I think we shouldn't hurry. It will take time. It will take time for us, and I think the biggest challenge is to learn the business in Malmö, for example, how to work with the goals to make climate change, and that's a long educational way we have to go. So it will take time, and I think Malmö should support us more in this educational way. So we have to learn more how to work in small businesses and middle businesses in Malmö, and how to implicate the goals in our work. So this is a real challenge for us. But I think Malmö is good. Malmö is working very hard with this, with the climate goals and with the climate work, and we are on the right track, but it will take time. And let it take time. That's the most important.
Oh, thank you, all of you, to contribute to the discussion in Transformers podcast. And thank you for today, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I'm Kai Embren. Follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, where I will be announcing the future guests to this podcast. And you can expect about 2 programs a month, and each guest has a unique story of making business and society sustainable. So find out more, visit my homepage kaiembren.org. Thank you for listening.